My name is Emma Reyes, and I am 31 years old. For as long as I can remember, my parents have treated me less like a daughter and more like the family help. While my younger sister Olivia was adored and praised, I was the one told to set the table, wash the dishes, prepare the food, and keep quiet in the corner. 15 years of holidays looked the same. She sparkled in gowns, greeting guests with champagne in her hand, while I sweated over the stove in clothes I did not mind ruining. Last Christmas Eve, my mother Catherine called me with that familiar commanding voice. She told me to forget whatever silly plans I had and be at the Connecticut house by noon. 30 guests were coming, most of them important business contacts. 7 main courses, 10 sides, dessert, wine pairings. I was expected to create the entire spread alone. The way she said it made it sound like she was granting me an honor, not ordering her elder daughter to act as unpaid labor. I held my phone so tight my knuckles turned white. On the desk in front of me lay my business class ticket to Miami. I had a meeting with Horizon Hospitality on the day after Christmas. A contract worth $3 million for Radiant Events, the company I had built from scratch. A company with 60 employees, 3 offices, and a client list that stretched from luxury resorts to global corporations. Yet in my mother's world, I was still the girl with nothing better to do than chop onions while my sister charmed the room. When she finished speaking, she added the words that always cut deep. These are people who matter. Do not embarrass us, people who matter. As if I did not. She hung up before I could answer. I sat in silence staring at the plane ticket and the leather folder that held the contract which could change my life. The cruel irony was that one of the guests my mother wanted me to serve was none other than Sophia Tan, the Chief Executive Officer of Horizon Hospitality. The same woman flying to Miami to finalize the agreement with me. Imagine that. My family's invisible servant expected to carry trays of canapés for a guest who was about to sign me into national recognition. The woman who had followed my company's growth for 2 years. The woman whose approval would secure the future of every person on my payroll. I thought back to the years of swallowing humiliation. Thanksgiving dinners where my father introduced Olivia as their accomplished daughter in public relations while I was brushed off as Emma is here too. She is helping out. Engagement parties where I labored in the kitchen for 14 hours while Olivia posed in dresses our parents purchased. The unspoken rule was always the same. She was the star, I was the staff. That night, as I stared out at the Manhattan skyline from my apartment window, I felt something shift. I had played the quiet, useful daughter long enough. I had endured being treated like a backup character in my own story. But now the stakes were too high. I was standing on the edge of the biggest deal of my life. A deal that could transform Radiant Events from regional success into a national powerhouse. So when my phone buzzed again with Olivia's smug message, reminding me not to screw things up because important people would be there, I laughed aloud. For once they would have to figure it out without me. I had a flight to catch. I had my own future to claim. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever been dismissed until someone needed something from you, then you already know the fire that burned in my chest that evening. Before I continue with how everything unraveled, tell me in the comments if you have lived through a moment when you finally said enough. Your stories matter here, because no one deserves to feel unseen. I was 17 the first time I realized my role in the Reyes family was not that of a daughter but of a background character. At Olivia's sweet 16 party, she floated down the staircase in a glittering dress while guests applauded. I stood in the kitchen, arranging trays of hors d'oeuvres, because my mother insisted that paying outside caterers was unnecessary when they already had me. That pattern never changed. Every celebration, every gathering, I was the silent hand behind the food while Olivia dazzled on stage. By the time I reached my 20s, the message had sunk in deep. I stopped trying to impress them with grades or career ambitions. Nothing I did mattered unless it served Olivia's image or my parents' social standing. But even while they overlooked me, I was quietly shaping a future they could not imagine. I worked double shifts waiting tables in New York, saving every tip I earned. With that small fund, I launched Radiant Events. It started with modest parties, a wedding here, a graduation there. Then word spread. My eye for detail, my refusal to cut corners, my ability to listen to clients, those traits built trust. In silence, I grew. What began as a one-woman hustle expanded into a team of 60. We opened an office in Brooklyn, then another in Miami, then one in Los Angeles. I recruited chefs who had been underestimated elsewhere, planners who had been told they would never make it. Together, we crafted experiences that drew the attention of luxury resorts and corporate executives. When magazines began calling me the quiet revolutionary of hospitality, I laughed at the irony. To my family, I was still the girl with nothing going on, the one they pitied for living in a supposed shoebox apartment. I never corrected them. I learned that success revealed too early would only trigger their dismissiveness. Once, at a family dinner, I hinted that I had landed a major contract. My mother cut me off, turning the conversation back to Olivia's latest campaign for a soft drink company. That was the moment I stopped offering information. If they wanted to believe I was invisible, let them. It gave me the freedom to build without interference. But invisibility hurts, even when you learn to wear it like armor. I remember walking into my childhood bedroom last summer only to find it gutted, my trophies and books packed into boxes in the basement. The space had been transformed into an overflow closet for Olivia's designer wardrobe. My mother said it so casually. "Olivia needs the room," she explained. "Image is everything in public relations." Meanwhile, Olivia enjoyed a full floor of the house, remodeled at my parents' expense, while I was treated as a temporary visitor in a home I helped decorate every Christmas. The irony was bitter. While they dismissed me as between jobs, I was closing $500,000 contracts. While they assumed I scraped by in a studio, I had purchased a 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, overlooking the park. While they patted my hand and praised me for being at least useful in the kitchen, I was employing chefs with Michelin experience. My reality was worlds away from the character they had written for me. One evening, after a company holiday gala, my staff surprised me with a celebration for landing Horizon Hospitality as a client. 50 employees raised glasses to my leadership, chanting my name. In that moment, surrounded by people who saw my worth, I felt something I had never known in my own family. Genuine respect. The contrast was searing. Still, I kept my success quiet at home. I convinced myself it was easier. Yet deep down, I longed for them to ask even a single question. "What exactly do you do, Emma? How are you building this?" But the questions never came. They did not want to know. It was simpler to cling to their narrative. Poor Emma, the one who never quite measured up. Then came the email from Forbes. They wanted to feature me in their upcoming issue of 40 Under 40. They said my story of building a company without family connections was inspiring. I stared at the message for a long time. It felt surreal. My name on that list, my photo on that cover, while my parents still told their friends that I was drifting from one odd job to another. I thought about my employees, people who trusted me to fight for contracts that would secure their futures. Maria, my head chef, had just signed papers for her first house. James, my operations manager, was saving for his children's education. They depended on me, and that meant Horizon Hospitality mattered more than any family demand. The day Catherine called about Christmas Eve, I was already rehearsing my presentation for Sophia Tan. The board at Horizon had made it clear. "Emma, you must be in Miami the morning after Christmas." Sophia herself had insisted on my presence. This was the deal of a lifetime, the kind of contract that propelled a company from known to legendary. Missing it was not an option, yet my family could not see beyond their own needs. To them, my travel was a selfish whim, an inconvenience to Olivia's grand networking event. They assumed I had nothing better to do than spend 12 hours in their kitchen. They assumed wrong. I sat on my bed that night with both suitcases open, one filled with business attire, contracts, and a laptop ready for the boardroom, the other empty, waiting for the role they wanted me to play once more. For a moment, the weight of 15 years pressed down on me. Then I zipped the business case shut. My decision was made. Before I tell you what happened when I finally said no, let me ask you something. Have you ever worked in silence, achieving more than anyone guessed, while being treated like you were nothing special? Share your story. I read every word, because I know the ache of being overlooked, and I also know the fire that rises when you choose to stop hiding. The next morning, my phone lit up before I had even finished my coffee. Catherine again. Her voice was sharp the second I answered. No greeting, no softness. "Cancel your plans, Emma. Olivia's event is too important." She spoke as though my life did not exist outside their Connecticut mansion, as though I were some personal assistant she could summon at will. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "What plans do you think I have, Mother?" She scoffed, that dismissive sound I had known since childhood. "Nothing you are doing could be as valuable as this dinner. There will be chief executives, partners, people who shape reputations. She paused for emphasis. This could change Olivia's career. You should be grateful to help. Grateful. That word rang in my ears. Grateful for what? Years of invisibility? A childhood bedroom stripped away for designer shoes? The endless assumption that my only skill was stirring a pot? My chest tightened, but this time not from defeat. It was from resolve. Mother, I said evenly, I have a business trip. I am flying to Miami tonight. Silence, then laughter. What business? Do not exaggerate. You cook sometimes, yes, but that is hardly business. Cancel it. She demanded it like she always had, certain I would fold. Not this time. No, I said firmly. If I leave, she warned, do not bother coming back. The words were familiar. She had used them like weapons all my life. But now, instead of cutting me down, they felt like a release. Then this is goodbye. I ended the call before my courage could falter. My hands trembled, but not with fear. For the first time, the tremor came from freedom. Minutes later, Olivia's name flashed on the screen. She did not waste time. What is wrong with you? Mother is frantic. Do you know how important this is? I held the phone away as she shouted. This is about you being jealous, isn't it? Because Mother gave me your room. My room was gone years ago, I answered calmly. And this is about my career, Olivia. What career? She sneered. You cook sometimes. I smiled despite myself. I own a catering company. Sure you do, she scoffed, her voice dripping with disbelief. Look, I will pay you $200 to handle the food. I almost laughed aloud. My day rate for private chef services was $5,000, though she had no idea. No amount of bribery would change my choice. I am not coming. Then you are dead to us, she threatened. I let her words hang in the air before replying. I have been invisible to you for years. What difference does it make? I hung up, switched off my phone, and went back to packing. Still, I am not completely heartless. On my counter, I scribbled numbers for 3 emergency catering companies and left them beside one of my business cards. If they wanted to solve their problem, they could. For once, the burden was not mine to carry. By evening, I was at JFK, suitcase in hand, heart pounding with equal parts fear and exhilaration. The plane lifted off at 8:07, and as New York lights blurred below me, I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. I thought of my employees, of Maria's new home, of James's children. I thought of Sophia Tan waiting in Miami. This was no longer about my family's approval. It was about responsibility, leadership, and finally claiming the life I had built. Meanwhile, back in Connecticut, chaos brewed. By 6 in the evening, Catherine realized I truly was not coming. The kitchen remained untouched. The pantry stocked only with basics. Guests began to arrive expecting an elegant feast. Olivia's frantic texts flooded in. Mother is losing it. She is calling every restaurant in a 50-mile radius. Everything is closed. How could you do this? At 7, sharp, the first executives walked in. Catherine, usually so composed, tried to stall with wine and forced smiles. By 7:23, Olivia's panic was evident. We are ordering pizza. Do you understand what you have done? At 7:47, another text arrived. Mother just told everyone you are unreliable and unstable. She is blaming you. I sat in my hotel suite in Miami reading their desperation while sipping water with lemon. For once, I felt no pull to rescue them. At 8:15, another message came. The pizzas have arrived. 5 boxes from one chain, 3 from another, because no single store could handle the order so late. I pictured Catherine's prized Waterford crystal laid out on the mahogany table, now holding greasy cardboard slices. The image was almost too perfect. Guests began leaving early, disgust written on their faces. Olivia tried pitching her public relations services between bites of fast food, but the humiliation was complete. And among those guests sat Sophia Tan, the woman my mother had bragged about impressing. She left before dessert, her opinion of the Reyes family forever altered. That night, while my family scrambled to cover their disaster, I reviewed the Horizon hospitality contract in peace. I read the clause that required the chief executive officer's presence at every strategic session and felt grateful for my resolve. Choosing myself meant choosing the future of everyone who depended on me. If you have ever stood at a crossroads where one path meant continuing to serve people who never valued you, and the other meant stepping into your own power, then you know the weight of that choice. Tell me, what would you have done? Stayed to play servant one more time or boarded the plane to protect your dream? I want to hear your answer, because every person who comments teaches someone else that they are not alone. The following evening in Miami, I prepared for dinner with Sophia Tan and her executive team. I had arrived early, determined to make the right impression. My best suit was pressed, my presentation binder perfectly organized. This dinner was not just a formality, it was the foundation of trust before the final contract signing. Sophia arrived a few minutes late, looking composed but tired. She smiled warmly as she extended her hand. I must apologize for my delay. I just flew in from Connecticut. The words struck like a drumbeat. Connecticut. My pulse quickened, though I kept my face calm. She continued, I was invited to a Christmas Eve dinner there. An absolute disaster, to be honest. I leaned forward politely, pretending to be curious. What happened? Sophia shook her head, half amused, half exasperated. The hostess had promised an elegant evening, a home-cooked feast prepared by her daughter. Instead, we walked into chaos. No food, no preparation. At one point she was scrambling to order pizza. She chuckled softly, still incredulous. Imagine executives and bankers eating delivery pizza on crystal plates. I forced myself to nod sympathetically, my expression neutral. That must have been awkward. She went on. The hostess spent the evening insulting her absent daughter, called her unreliable, unstable, said she never held a real job. It was astonishing, truly. I wondered how a mother could speak that way. My hands rested steady on the table, but inside, my heart hammered. Sophia had no idea that I was the very daughter dismissed at that dinner, the same daughter she was about to sign a multi-million-dollar deal with. I kept my smile measured. Families can be complicated, I said softly. The dinner continued with small talk and then shifted into business. Sophia complimented Radiant Events' growth, noting how rare it was to see a company built without outside funding. She praised the creativity of our event designs and the professionalism of our staff. Every word confirmed that I had chosen the right path. The next morning, I stood in Horizon's boardroom, ready to present. The table gleamed beneath the bright lights, executives seated in anticipation. I walked them through projections, creative strategies, and logistical plans. The room was focused, nodding, impressed. Then, just as the presentation ended, Sophia's assistant entered with an iPad. Miss Tan, you should see this. Sophia's brow furrowed as she scanned the screen. Her expression shifted from curiosity to shock. Slowly, she looked up at me. Emma, she said, her voice careful. Is this you? She turned the device around. On the screen was a family photo taken in the Reyes mansion. Olivia stood in the center, Catherine and David flanking her, and in the background, half hidden, stood me. I held her gaze and nodded. Yes. Catherine Reyes is your mother? She asked. Yes. The boardroom fell silent. Sophia set down the iPad, her eyes studying me. So you are the daughter your family dismissed, the one they called unstable, the one who was supposed to cook that dinner. I kept my voice calm. I chose my business over playing servant. Sophia leaned back, exhaling as though she finally understood the full story. Your own family does not know you are the founder of Radiant Events. They never asked, I answered simply. A ripple of disbelief passed through the room. One executive muttered, Unbelievable. Another shook his head. Sophia suddenly laughed, not unkindly, but with genuine amusement. Your mother spent the evening humiliating her absent daughter. And that daughter is the chief executive officer I have been trying to partner with for 2 years. She looked at her team. This may be the most interesting contract we ever sign. As if fate demanded further confirmation, Sophia's assistant rushed in again. Forbes just released their announcement. The next cover story is live. He connected the iPad to the boardroom screen. My photograph appeared in sharp detail. The headline read, From Invisible to Indispensable, How Emma Reyes Built a Hospitality Empire Without a Dollar of Family Support. The silence broke into murmurs. One executive whistled low. Another leaned forward to read aloud from the article preview. Radiant Events, founded by Emma Reyes at age 25, has grown into a national leader in luxury catering. The company operates on a 6-month waiting list and has been praised for redefining client care. Sophia looked back at me, her eyes sparkling with admiration. Your family does not know this? They believe I am unemployed. She shook her head. Then they are about to be very surprised. She stood, excused herself, and stepped out to make a call. Through the glass we could see her pacing, speaking animatedly. When she returned, Her expression was both triumphant and mischievous. I just spoke with Catherine Reyes. My stomach tightened. You what? She smiled. I told her that last night's event was unacceptable and that I would be taking my business elsewhere. She begged me to reconsider, blamed everything on her older daughter. Then Sophia's smile widened. I told her I had just signed a $3 million contract with the most talented entrepreneur I know. She asked who. I said, your daughter, Emma Reyes. For a moment I could not breathe. The room was silent except for the scratching of a pen as Horizon's legal counsel pushed the papers forward. Sophia extended her hand across the table. Miss Reyes, let us finalize this partnership. I signed, my name flowing in ink across the pages. Applause erupted around the table. Champagne corks popped. My phone buzzed with call after call from home, but I ignored them. In that moment I was not invisible. I was undeniable. If you have ever been underestimated, if you have ever been called less than you are by people who should have been your loudest supporters, then you know the weight of what I felt that day. Share your experience, because your voice might be the very encouragement someone else needs to keep going. Within minutes of signing that contract, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Dozens of missed calls, new voicemails, frantic text messages, first from my mother, then Olivia, then even my father who usually stayed silent in the background. I slipped the phone into my bag and let it buzz. This moment was mine. No one was going to steal it. Later, in the quiet of my hotel suite, I finally opened the messages. Catherine's words came first. Answer your phone now. Then Olivia's. Is this some kind of joke? People are saying you're a chief executive officer. Dad's voice appeared in a text. Your mother is hysterical. Victoria, no. Sophia Tan told everyone you're the head of Radiant Events. Please explain. I set the phone down and poured myself a glass of water. For years they had spoken over me, dismissed me, assigned me the role of servant. Now they were scrambling, desperate for answers. It almost felt like justice. But the storm outside my door was only beginning. By the next day, news of the Horizon deal was everywhere. Sophia had posted a photo on LinkedIn. Me standing beside her team, contract in hand, champagne flutes raised. Her caption read, thrilled to announce our partnership with Radiant Events and their brilliant chief executive officer, Emma Reyes. Built from the ground up, Emma's company will redefine hospitality across Horizon properties. The post spread like wildfire. Industry peers congratulated me. Former clients praised their experiences. Even strangers shared the story, admiring the journey from invisibility to influence. Meanwhile, my family's carefully built social image cracked wide open. At the country club, whispers circulated faster than martinis. Catherine, who had always boasted about her perfect entertaining, was now the subject of ridicule. Serving pizza on crystal after bragging about her daughter's cooking became legend. Olivia's firm lost a major account when Sophia cut ties, citing family values. Charities quietly dropped my mother from their boards. My father's golf buddies asked how he could have been so blind. Amid the fallout, my phone kept buzzing. Catherine called in tears. How could you do this to us? You humiliated the family, I answered calmly. I didn't humiliate you. You did that yourselves. You never asked about my life. You never wanted to know, she cried harder, insisting that I owed them loyalty. I replied, I built this without you. Without your money. Without your connections. Without even your belief. You chose not to see me. For once, my father found his voice. He called quietly, almost shamefully. Emma, I knew you were doing something. Years ago I saw the business registration in the mail. But your mother was so certain, so insistent about who you were supposed to be. It was easier to let her version stand. I should have spoken up. I am sorry. His honesty startled me. It was the first time in years he admitted fault. I wanted to be angry, but instead I felt a weary relief. At least one of them finally said it. Still, his words did not erase the past. Silence had its own weight. Complicity had its own cost. Meanwhile, Radiant Events soared. The Forbes cover hit stands with my photograph front and center, the headline bold and unignorable. From invisible to indispensable, interviews poured in. Clients I had courted for years suddenly called, eager to work together. Within a week, we had 200 new inquiries. Contracts worth millions followed. I expanded staff, promoted Maria to executive chef, elevated James to chief operations officer. Sophia introduced me to her network with a grin. Imagine, she told them, having a golden goose in your home and treating it like a servant duck. Her story of that Christmas Eve dinner became her favorite anecdote. People laughed, shook their heads, and marveled at the irony. What once embarrassed me now empowered me. Still, my family tried to regain control. Olivia called one evening, her voice trembling. Is it true? All of it? You've been building this empire for 5 years? Why didn't you tell us? I answered simply, you never asked. She begged me to meet, said Mother was falling apart. I reminded her that I had spent half my life falling apart under their neglect. Now it was my time to stand. She accused me of being cold. I corrected her. I am not cold, Olivia. I am finished being invisible until you need a cook. If you want to know me now, meet me as the woman I am, not the shadow you preferred. For the first time, she had no retort. Only silence. The calls, the tears, the accusations kept coming, but I no longer flinched. My boundaries were firm, and my life had outgrown their small vision. If you have ever watched people who underestimated you scramble to explain themselves when your success became undeniable, then you know the strange mix of vindication and sorrow that filled me. Part of you wants to shout, I told you so. Another part simply exhales, grateful to be free. A week later, I agreed to meet them. Not at the mansion in Connecticut, not on their terms, but at a quiet restaurant in the city. Neutral ground. When I arrived, they were already seated. Catherine looked smaller somehow, her flawless posture bent under the weight of shame. David avoided my eyes, fiddling with the napkin in his lap. Olivia sat stiffly, her face pale. I placed my bag beside me and waited. No warm greetings, no fake smiles. Catherine spoke first, her voice trembling. Emma, we didn't know. We didn't understand what you were building. I lifted a brow. You never asked. She flinched, as though struck. Olivia leaned forward quickly. Look, we messed up. Mother thought. She broke off, then tried again. I thought you were just drifting. I snapped my gaze to hers. Drifting? I built a company with 3 offices and over 60 employees. I signed a contract that your own firm couldn't dream of. That's drifting? Her lips trembled. I was jealous. She said it softly, but it landed heavily. Every time you worked in silence, every time you refused to fight for attention, I thought it meant you had nothing. And when clients slipped through my fingers while you kept gaining ground, I felt smaller. So I let Mother treat you like the servant. It made me feel bigger. For the first time, real honesty crossed her face. I sat back, letting the words sink in. Then Catherine whispered, I am sorry. Not for the optics, not for the embarrassment, but for how we treated you. We should have seen you. My father finally looked at me. We cannot undo it, but we want to rebuild. I let the silence hang before answering. If you want me in your lives, it's on my terms. No more servant treatment, no more jokes about drifting. Respect, therapy, and acknowledgement. And if those things don't happen, I walk away. Catherine nodded quickly, desperate. Yes, anything. Olivia's eyes brimmed with tears. I don't want to lose you. I studied them across the table. These people who had once reduced me to the shadows of their shining daughter. I wanted to believe their words. I wanted to trust. But years of dismissal had taught me caution. Boundaries mattered more than longing. I am not coming back as the same girl you ignored, I said evenly. If I stay, it is as Emma Reyes, founder and chief executive officer of Radiant Events. Equal or nothing. The server arrived then, breaking the tension. Plates clattered down, steam rising from hot dishes. No one spoke for several minutes, but something had shifted. Catherine no longer barked orders. Olivia no longer looked smug. David no longer stayed silent. For the first time, they were listening. When dinner ended, my mother reached for my hand. I let her touch it briefly before pulling away. I believed her remorse, but trust had to be rebuilt, not assumed. As I walked out into the cool night air, I felt lighter. For once, I had spoken on my own terms and been heard. Some bridges can be repaired with effort. Others must be left behind. I didn't know yet which kind mine would be. But I knew this. The choice was finally mine to make. If you've ever faced the moment where people who hurt you ask for forgiveness, you know the conflict. Do you open the door or keep it closed? Share your story, because your experience might give someone else the courage to set their own terms. The months that followed felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground. Radiant Events thrived in ways I had only dreamed about. The Horizon contract alone doubled our yearly revenue, and the Forbes cover sparked a flood of new opportunities. Suddenly, every major hospitality brand wanted to work with us. Resorts in Hawaii, luxury cruise lines, and even European hotels reached out. My calendar filled with meetings and flights, the kind of schedule that once belonged only to the people I served. But beyond the numbers, what mattered most was the validation for my team. Maria beamed as she hired additional sous chefs and trained them with the pride of someone finally seen. James negotiated better benefits for staff, ensuring they received health coverage and bonuses. Watching my people grow reminded me of why I started this company in the first place: to create a workplace where no one was invisible, where effort was acknowledged, and where dignity was standard. Meanwhile, my family tried to navigate their own collapse. Catherine's invitations to charity galas grew fewer, and her once loyal circle of friends turned distant. The story of the Christmas Eve pizza dinner lingered like smoke. At first she fought it, insisting it was exaggerated, but eventually even she admitted privately to me that the humiliation was unforgettable. David retreated from the social scene, embarrassed by his silence. Olivia's firm lost clients one after another until she was forced to scale back operations. She called me one evening in tears, admitting she might have to close her office. For the first time, I heard humility in her voice rather than condescension. I did not gloat. I simply listened. I knew too well the ache of failure. Yet I also knew it was not my job to rescue them. They had to face the consequences of their choices, just as I had faced the consequences of mine. Then came an invitation I never expected. The Food Network wanted to film a documentary about radiant events. They loved the irony of my story. The invisible daughter turned culinary empire builder. The cameras followed me as I directed events, negotiated contracts, and laughed with my team in the kitchen. They even filmed a segment at my Manhattan apartment, showing the contrast between my modest beginnings and the success I now lived. When the episode aired, my phone exploded again, this time with congratulations. Former classmates reached out. Old bosses who once underestimated me sent messages of awe. My parents watched in silence from their home. Olivia texted me, simply, "I'm proud of you." It was the first time she had ever said those words. Months later, I hosted an event of my own, not at a rented hall or client's estate, but at my home. I wanted to celebrate my team, to thank them for standing with me. I invited my family too, unsure if they would come. To my surprise, they arrived early, dressed plainly, without the air of superiority they once carried. Catherine stood awkwardly at the door until I welcomed her in. She looked around at the beautifully arranged tables, the warm lighting, the laughter of my employees. For once, she was not the hostess. She was a guest. David shook hands with my staff, thanking them sincerely. Olivia mingled quietly, asking questions about the work with genuine interest. When dinner began, my team served the courses with pride. Catherine's eyes welled as she lifted a forkful of delicately plated food. "This is exquisite," she whispered, almost to herself. Olivia leaned toward me. "I see now what you built. I see it clearly." I nodded but said nothing. Their recognition was late, but it was real. Whether it would last, only time would tell. Yet at that table, surrounded by laughter and warmth, I felt a measure of healing. As the night wound down, I stood to give a toast. I looked around the room at my team, at my family, at the life I had carved from silence. I raised my glass. To everyone who has ever been overlooked. To those who worked in the shadows while others took the spotlight. Your worth is not defined by their blindness. Keep building, keep shining. Eventually, the world will see. The room erupted in applause. My employees clinked glasses. My family bowed their heads. And I felt the chapter of invisibility finally closing. When the last guest left and the house fell quiet, I sat by the window, watching the city lights shimmer. I thought of the little girl who once stood in the kitchen doorway, longing to be noticed. I thought of the young woman who worked double shifts, saving every tip. And I thought of the woman I had become: strong, visible, unstoppable. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you are less than you are, remember this: your story is not finished. You are not invisible. And one day, when the truth comes out, those who ignored you will have no choice but to see. So, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you're building your own dream in silence, because your breakthrough is on its way. And when it arrives, it will be brighter than you ever imagined.